My home is a museum, basically. For example, one wall is covered in this dark red crimson velvet hanging, which was part of my grandmother's dowry when she got married.
This is Writer's Mosaic, What We Leave We Carry, the series that tells the true life stories of migration to the UK.
My name is Mimi Khalvati, or pronounced properly Mimi Khalvati, which is from the Farsi, because I'm Iranian. I was born in Tehran, and as a child, when I was 6, I was sent to boarding school on the Isle of Wight in Shanklin, and all my school years until I was adult really were spent on the island, and so English is really my first language, and I am a writer. I write in English. And my Farsi, my mother tongue, is actually very, very inadequate. I actually don't remember anything from the time I did first come to England, but I imagine I knew absolutely nothing at all. I didn't know any English. I didn't have any words of English. I think it was a complete mystery. I have had 2 or 3 sort of pretend memories, I might call them, quasi-memories, because I'm not sure that they really are memories, but I remember the colour or the colours of my nursery furniture very clearly, which was a very particular pink, like a guava pink mixed with cream. I remember the smells of some food seemed to be familiar, and I have 1 or 2 memories that I'm not sure are real or not. One was because my parents did divorce fairly early in my life, so I'm not really sure when, probably when I was about 8. It happened while I was on the Isle of Wight, so I really had no knowledge of that happening at all. I just gradually became aware of my parents being divorced much later in my sort of teenage years, probably. I remember a lot from my school because I was there from the age of 6 to 16. I remember, for example, it was the coronation of the Queen, Queen Elizabeth, and we were making a screen which was covered in a kind of like brown paper, as I seem to remember. That doesn't sound very glamorous. But anyway, so each of us little girls, we were cutting out pictures of things to stick on the screen or drawing things to stick on the screen. And I remember choosing the most difficult thing of all, which was the coronation coach with the horses, and cutting out the horses' hooves and all that intricate stuff with tiny scissors. I think I did feel different, but it's really very difficult to say in what way. It probably was a feeling of knowing that I was different, but really denying it. So I think I was very keen to be assimilated and to be the same as everybody. I kept in touch with my family in a very artificial, tenuous way. I had to write letters home. Well, we all had to write letters home on Sundays. So every Sunday, and it was torture to me because I just didn't know who I was writing to. And I didn't really know what to say, because if you don't know who you're writing to, how would you know what to say? Writing to my mother, whose English was very good, and she wrote back to me in English. She had been educated in the American school in Tehran, so she spoke English with a sort of Iranian-American accent. And there were various people in my family who I couldn't really remember them, but I knew them by name. So I would dutifully say, please give my love to Baba Saeed, my grandfather, to Telo June, my grandmother, and sometimes even to a dog or something. I didn't really remember any of them. My mother visited I think about every 4 years, though it's debatable, because at one point she said, I visited you every 4 years, and then later on I think she realised that was a bit dodgy, so she said I visited every year. When my mother visited, she was very glamorous. She wore fur jackets, white fur jackets, and had long red fingernails, which in Shanklin on the Isle of Wight in the 50s was quite extraordinary. The rest of my family I never saw, and I didn't go back to Iran until a summer holiday when I was 13. After I'd left school, I went back to Iran when I was about 17. So this would have been about 1960, I think. It was considered to be a great privilege and honour if you spoke English fluently, which I did, of course. I didn't speak Farsi at all, but nobody seemed to think there was anything wrong with that. So long as, it was this thing that anything Western was desirable and admirable. I was always treated as though I was in some way special, while at the same time, inside myself, it felt very awkward that I didn't know how to behave like an Iranian or how to speak Farsi. To have an English education in those days was considered the ultimate. It was before really everyone started sending their children to America. I got married at 19 to an Iranian, and then I got divorced at 21, and then I saved up money to send myself to drama school. So I came back to London and went to drama school because I wanted not to be an actress but to be a theatre director. After drama school, I married an actor who was at drama school actually with me. After my daughter was born in Tehran, we came back to England. So it was quite a bit of movement in every sort of 2 or 3 years without any sense of ever deciding or in fact thinking that I had to decide where I wanted to live. I wouldn't like to think of myself as homeless, so I better think of it, England as being home. I'm aware of the two cultures, one of which is my birthright, I suppose, and the other is adoptive, of course, the English culture. And I compare them, usually in a spirit of grumbling about one or the other. I'm not very serious about it because they're so utterly different. So either I'm grumbling about the wonderful way they do something or other in Iran and the English haven't a clue, or the wonderful way in England you can just grumble a lot or whatever, and you can't in another culture. Recent example might be that only recently have we had these small cucumbers in England, and before I was so rude about those horrible, huge, watery cucumbers in England, and how in Iran they had these beautiful, small cucumbers that were considered as fruit, not as vegetables. So they were always in these marvellous fruit bowls, and generally the magnificence of Persian fruit, which was always to die for, white nectarines. We haven't got white nectarines here. And I would, rabbit on in that fashion. And for example, the extended family, more seriously, I've thought there are many things about the extended family, I think, are more desirable in Persian culture, the way they look after the elderly. Now that I'm 80, I specifically think about this. I think, oh, that would be very good. They respect and honour the elderly and visit them and just look after them and honour them in every way. Or the way that childcare is shared. I suppose especially now when, social care and so on is such a problem in this country. To live here in this society, in this culture, seems to me infinitely preferable. And of course, the Iran I knew is pre-revolution Iran, so I'm not comparing things with the culture in Iran now, post-revolution, with the Islamic regime, because I don't know anything about it. I've never lived there under that regime. I think in London, particularly, I like the multicultural mix. I like the sense of freedom that I think is quite often, we take it for granted that we can dress however we like, we can talk however we like. There isn't a huge pressure of social norms and expectations on you. You can't really compare this society, this culture, with the one currently at the moment in Iran, which I know little about. I have no contact with anyone in Iran since my mother died, because my mother was my main channel. It was through her that I had news of the family and or even news of generally what was going on in Iran and so on, and occasionally seeing her friends when I visited her. And that I had myself one or two friends who were in Iran who I've really lost touch with now. I'd love to visit Iran as an abstract idea. I would find it very difficult to visit Iran on my own. I would feel it, that would be impossible in a way. And also, it's not as though I could visit Iran as an English or as a British person. I would be visiting Iran as an Iranian who's not really in many respects an Iranian, and that creates all kinds of difficulties and conflicts for me, not least when I arrive in the airport. I can't read the forms, and then the officials give me a hard time and they think I'm just pretending, and there's so many of these tiny little micro difficulties all the time, never mind the perhaps larger questions of security and so on. I do think there have been difficulties as an Iranian here, but very few compared to the very serious difficulties that other Iranians who have problems with visas and residence permits and work permits and all the rest of it, that they would experience. So my experience has been very minimal in terms of difficulty. When I left drama school, I wanted to, act in theatre, and I was offered the opportunity, but I didn't have a work permit, even though I had spent all my childhood here, and there was no way I could get one. So at that point, actually, I got married in order to get a British passport. So that was my first big stumbling block, being an Iranian. Another one was as an actor. In those days, not very different to how it is now, was the problem and the difficulty of what possible acting jobs would I get? What would I be cast as? And interestingly, the first job I was offered was for the role of Scheherazade in a play in the West End. More significantly for me, I have had problems as a poet and in terms of how my work has been perceived, or perhaps misconstrued, or my identity has been rather obscure, I might say, or a bit complicated for people to be fully aware of. I've always felt just slightly, seen through a slightly distorted lens. My home is a museum, basically, or a mausoleum even, because so many of the objects in my home have been gifts, many from my family, from my mother particularly, or have belonged to my mother, and when she died, including a vast number of her paintings, which I inherited, and I honestly have never known what to do with other than just to put them on my walls, really. So the way my current flat, and I've been here over 30 years now, the way it's decorated is pretty much the way I've grown up. Nothing has been through my own choice. The place is just completely covered, every single inch of every wall, with something that conveys a loved person or time in my life. For example, one wall is covered in this dark red crimson velvet hanging, which was part of my grandmother's dowry when she got married. And in fact, round the edges, her name has been embroidered in gold thread and seed pearls. Now, the gold thread now is so tarnished you can't see it's gold thread, but absolutely exquisite embroidery in the corners and in the lettering of her name, which was, her name was Talat, meaning gold, and Talat Saltaneh was her title, as in Sultan. And what I love is you've got Talat on one side, say the north side, then Talat Sultan sort of thing, divided up, as it were, on the four sides of the hanging. And the loveliest detail of that is that this exquisite embroidery on this beautiful red velvet, when we come to Ene, because this is in Latin script, the N is backwards. So although they could do this magnificent embroidery that is very, very complex, they'd got the lettering wrong. I just think that is just so sweet. The other day, something really sweet happened. My friend Michelle, who lives in Finchley, where there are lots of Iranian shops and restaurants apparently, came to visit, and she brought me from a restaurant a Persian dish which we call zereshk polo. The word polo is the word pilau, is actually the origin of the word pilau. So it's rice dish. Zereshk is barberries. So it's a rice dish mixed with barberries, chicken, cumin, saffron. And Michelle had brought this rice dish for me from this Persian restaurant which we shared as lunch, and she said, "Do you like this dish?" And I said, "Michelle, my mother told me that when I was little, a little girl in Iran before I was sent to the Isle of Wight, I was a very fussy eater, not like now, I can tell you, and the only dish I would eat was zereshk polo. And whenever we visited my aunts or great aunts, they all knew this and they would all cook for me specially zereshk polo." can't regret that I was sent to England, because I think the greatest gift has been to me the English language. My whole life has been spent in it, with it, learning it, at first very desperately quickly in order just to survive and to know where to go next when I was just little. And later, of course, as a poet and as a tutor and mentor. I love the English language enormously. I think it's been the best gift ever. I would not have wanted to have a life without it. I'm sure the Persian language is also magnificent, but I don't believe it is as wonderful for me as the English language has been. And that's what I treasure a great deal. And no, I don't think I would have wanted to grow up in Iran. But of course, I do feel a sense of the void, which is to do with not so much the country as my family and the Persian culture. I would have liked to have more knowledge of and experience of, and the language too. Yes. Thinking about my children, everything shifts, because the things I don't regret for myself, I regret for them. I desperately regret the fact that my children have inherited this lack of memory of their childhood. Nobody in my family, we don't remember anything. We sit there like idiots saying, oh, well, did this happen, or do you remember this? And nobody remembers anything. So they've inherited this kind of lack of knowing their own story. I regret that they know even less about Iran. And of course, I do now speak Farsi, but they don't speak Farsi. So all these things I regret very much for them.
Mimi Khalvati was talking to Maria Yastremska.